This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and this is the Laphroaig Lore. It's a 48% non-age statement Laphroaig with specs that aren't far off from some other sort of non-age statement core range peated whiskeys we're already familiar with. But this one comes with a price tag that's beyond some of the more cask strength level non-age statement whiskeys in this category. Can what's in this bottle possibly justify that price? My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts. So we don't talk about packaging very much on the channel, because it doesn't matter, but just to point out, this is the old version of this sort of bottling. There is a sort of subtle rebranding going on with Laphroaig. Recently, they changed sort of font size on the label, and they're going for sort of uniformity. And so this one now has a white label. Used to have this really dark, it looks black, it's dark green, this really rich sort of presentation with the dark canister as well. And it's sort of portraying it as standing out from the rest of the core range, right? It's darker, maybe it's more mysterious, and they named it Lore, so it seems like somebody over at Laphroaig is a Star Trek The Next Generation fan. So the packaging tells me that this is the richest of the rich, and that's sort of the angle here. So we're gonna go in, okay, they are not wrong. This is a rich nose, and it's sweet, and it is leading with a sort of red apple, a saltiness. It's that sort of sea salt maybe. It has a vanilla. It has a caramel. I will say that it's not super hot at 48%. The neck pour was a bit hot. It needed to open up. The neck pour was also a little bit more condensed. Real sticky caramel. Now that salt, sweet, that caramel, it's there, blending into the vanilla, but it's opened up more, and now, yeah, it's a like apple pie filling more. At the bottom of the nose, you know it's there. It's that trademark sort of medicinal Laphroaig element. It's very much receded back into the background where I think it should be. This is older Laphroaig than the 10-year, if rumor is to believe. It's got some of the Quarter Cask acceleration going on in it, and I think we've got a nice balance now for the medicinal. What haven't I said yet? Smoky. It isn't smoky. This does not come off as any sort of campfire smoke, ash. The peat is manifesting in the salt and that medicinal. The sweet is really dominating. There's a lot of fruit element here. As you sit with this, you really acclimate to it. You're getting a fruit beyond that apple that is, I think, is pretty dominant at the front end. Neck pour is pretty richly sweet strawberry. Now the fruit is gone a little bit more tart. It's a little bit more blueberry now. I'm getting a little cinnamon. I'm getting a little maybe citrus, lemon sort of at the bottom of this nose now. Let's check out the Lore on the palate. Creamy mouthfeel, it's not hot. This bottle's been open for more than a week, and you know, levels about here. Probably can't see with that dark bottle. It's, you know, nicely below the shoulders, had time to open up, and it opened up it has on this palate. We've got a sweetness on that neck pour. It was sort of caramel, chocolate, pretty rich, going into dark chocolate. Now that sweetness has opened up. It's released more dimension, I think, and the sweetness is a little bit more fruit forward rather than like chocolate forward. Now there's some smoke, really kind of ash floating in the air. You know, the fire isn't roaring, but there's some smoke now. Now, on the palate, before we get to the finish, it's taken the place of that medicinal. Really, you gotta go looking for it. It's there, it's Laphroaig, but it's not sitting up front, and it is receded, I think, even farther. So we've kind of swapped positions with the way that the peat is manifesting here. I'm getting more apple, I'm getting butterscotch, I'm getting a bitter, it was dark chocolate on that neck pour. Now that it's opened up, it's straight up kind of mocha coffee kind of, leaning toward the more bitter sort of coffee ground element. Go back on the finish, neat. First real sign of any sort of heat. It's not hot, but you do have some of that black pepper lively on the finish as it first kind of arrives and develops into the finish. You have a little bit of the sort of warmth. It really doesn't get kind of past, you know, your throat, but it's there, which is nice. And you have the biggest sort of indication of smoke, ash smoke. Get a little wave of that as it arrives. It really recedes the longer it goes. A long finish, you know, Laphroaig. You've got the peat, you've got the smoke. The ash settles on your tongue, and it starts, as it develops, getting into the sort of more oak tannin bitter, but it's never quite gives up that ashy quality, which I think is nice because it's sort of giving a dimension to that sort of as it sort of develops and recedes, sort of bitter on the tongue. Sweetness is really vanilla with some of that vanilla caramel swirl kind of around the sides, and there is the return of the sort of medicinal sort of element. It again is balanced, it's held in check, it's not running away with this whiskey. So pretty solid. Richest of the rich, it's rich, and the sherry fruit elements really aren't there. That orange, that dried fruit, I'm not talking about that. That's not really presenting. There's a lot of influence from the bourbon, I think. There's vanilla, there's caramel. So that's in there, but it's not a highly sort of sherry peated whiskey. Again, not very hot, but I'm gonna go very quickly and show you what happens when we hit it with the water. Okay, what a difference with the water. The sherry's here now. Now we've got that cinnamon, that baking spice is really emerging. There's a leathery element here that wasn't there at all. The peat, it's very earthy, almost seaweed earthy. The medicine, it's there. There is a pretty strong mintiness to it now. This is much more earthy. The volume on the sweet has been turned way down, and I'm coaxing up these additional flavors here with the water. It's pretty subtle. There's not much in the way of smoke. There wasn't that much before on the neat nose. It has just a toastiness. Something serious, like a toasty biscuit with honey on it. The sweetness is sort of at the bottom of this water added nose. Okay, going in now on the palate with the water. So the water give and the water take away. Here on the palate, what it's done is washed out most of the flavors. The sort of caramel rich, it's gone real honey now. It's washed out some of the salt. There's a little bit of remnant of sort of the cask maybe. Not a lot of peat influence here. Berry sweet, but it's gone sweet again. A red berry sweetness, but already not the most complicated whiskey, and it's really been sort of simplified here on the palate. So the palate is not really an improvement. It didn't need the water to be more sippable. It's pretty sippable as it is. Let's go back to the finish. Honestly, not that far off. There's sort of a delay now in that smoke plume. It really kind of arrives neat. Here, the finish has to develop a step, and then you get a wave of it. It's ashy smoke. It hasn't been diminished in any way. What else is on the sort of finish, that sort of vanilla, sort of caramel, it's there, kind of watered down, caramel icing now maybe over vanilla, but it has been sort of muted a little, but the smoke survived. Not much in the way of that medicinal. I know it's there, I know it's Laphroaig, I'm looking for it, I can kind of place it, and I want to kind of compare very quickly with a whiskey I've already reviewed on the channel, the Laphroaig Quarter Cask. We've got 48% Non Age Statement Laphroaig, right? This one's bourbon matured. It's finished in the Quarter Casks. If you don't know about the Quarter Casks and you're curious about it, you want to know why I prefer this whiskey by a pretty substantial margin to the 10-year, check out that video. I'm going to link it right up here. And I pre-poured so it could air out a little bit and breathe, so we have a sort of honest comparison. That is the bottle kill pour. I think this is the first time on the channel. That's the last of this bottle. It has the sort of caramel, it has the apple, it doesn't have much of the medicinal, it's buried down in the mix. a little bit of citrus. A lot of the sort of overlap here with this bottle. No sherry influence here. This one has the sherry influence, and the nose on it, yeah, by comparison, it's bigger. It's richer. On the palate, very quickly. Yeah, this palate is not that complicated. Very vanilla cream. The ash, the smoke. Here, we have a little bit more nuance when I was just talking about the palate. Going back very quickly on the finish on this whiskey, it just feels smokier throughout. Getting more of the ash, getting more of the smoke. Very similar sweetness, a lot of vanilla, a little pop of that Laphroaig medicinal. In check. Not hugely complicated. And over here, we do have a little bit more dimension on this whiskey. So I would say it's better than the Quarter Cask. But how much better? And that's a big question with this whiskey, because I think this whiskey is significantly overpriced. The Quarter Cask is, you know, about a $75 whiskey. It's a solid value. Despite the lack of age statement with those Quarter Casks, I gave it a very solid rating. This is better. But this bottle costs between, depending on where you are here in the US, between $130 and $150. And this is not twice as good as the Quarter Cask. I'm not sure it's even better than the Kilchoman Sanaig, which is only a 46% whiskey. It's 70% sherry, so it's much more sherry forward. It's not a 1-for-1. I think that's a pretty special whiskey. It's an $80 bottle, and I'm not sure that it's not better than this. Last month I had this year's Carchas, Laphroaig, so the annual release. That's a 10-year age statement. Triple cask, so it has the Quarter Cask, same that this has Oloroso, has bourbon casks. It's 52% or something like that. You know, you've got the ABV. It's just a much more serious and better whiskey than this. And it costs $100, and they're getting significantly more for this lore. So where does that leave me with the Laphroaig lore? I'm gonna say that this is a very solid Laphroaig. It does the thing I hope Laphroaigs will do, preserve that Laphroaig character, but keep it in check, keep it balanced. It does that. It's very rich. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this bottle. And I'm gonna say on the whiskey alone, this is a 4 1/4 glass whiskey. But I'm also gonna say that this is a significantly overpriced bottle. So I'm gonna take a full half point off of that score. I'm gonna give it 3.75 glasses. So enjoy this video. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. Hit that big button that's gonna come up right over here. And you don't wanna miss what's coming up this month. It's October, and we have more big peated whiskey to come. You don't wanna miss it. So make sure you subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.